Okay, do you want me to test or? Okay, it's working. Okay, we had some issues with our recording equipment yesterday, as Ms. Sue will know. Good morning. The hearing board of the South Coast Air Quality Management District is in session. Today is Thursday, June 14, 2018. The time is approximately 9:00 a.m., and we are meeting in the hearing board room in Diamond Bar. We have one matter on the agenda for today, and that is SCAQMD versus Sherman Oaks Hospital, case number 6108-1 for an order for abatement. And who is representing the executive officer this morning?
Daphne Sue.
Thank you. And who is representing Sherman Oaks Hospital this morning?
Ray LaFond.
Thank you. And Mr. LaFond, can you spell your name and state your title for the record?
Yes, Ray, R-A-Y, LaFond.
I think you just turned off your mic. You can leave it on.
How's that?
That's perfect.
It's Ray, R-A-Y, last name L-A, capital F-O-N-D, and I'm the Director of Engineering at Sherman Oaks Hospital.
Thank you, Mr. LaFond. So I'm going to swear in all the witnesses, and what we'll do is I'm going to have Ms. Sue give a brief opening statement, and then Mr. LaFond, if you would like to give a brief opening statement, which is just a summary of the position of the hospital. And then we're going to allow Ms. Sue to put on, it looks like she has one witness. She'll ask questions. You'll have an opportunity to ask questions as well, and so will the board. And then once we're done with that, then any witnesses you wish to present, including yourself. Are you going to be testifying today as well?
If need be.
Okay, so you are a firsthand witness who has knowledge of the
Yes.
events or facts that are pertinent.
Yes.
Okay, then I'll swear you in as well. Okay, and then, again, the board will be able to ask questions. Ms. Sue will ask questions of your witnesses as well, and then we will have closing remarks, and the board will deliberate today. Okay, so I'm going to ask everyone who is testifying today or thinks they will testify today to please stand to be sworn in. Please raise your right hand. Do you promise to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Sue, your opening.
Good morning, Chair and members of the board. We are here today for a stipulated order of abatement directed at Sherman Oaks Hospital. The facility has provided documents showing that an audit on its air conditioning systems have been performed and that a registration plan has been filed. There only remains one issue to address since the filing of the petition. The facility's operation of 5 boilers do not comply with the emissions limits set forth in Rule 1146.2. That rule provides emissions limits for nitrogen oxides and for carbon monoxide. The rule requires boilers older than 15 years old to be modified or demonstrated to meet emissions limits. The facility and the district have stipulated a proposed order whereby the facility will demonstrate final compliance by July 31st, 2018. We request that the hearing board enter the proposed order. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Sue. Mr. LaFond, do you have an opening statement?
Yes, I do. Upon the time that we were notified that our boilers are out of compliance, we actually went right to the source, hired a company to come in, adjust our boilers. They did not think they were up for the task of getting them all in compliance. So we went to another company, which is the gentleman next to me, Devonish, and he thought he'd have no problem getting the boilers in compliance. So my point is that basically we've been, since we were told we were out of compliance, we've been diligently making every effort to get them in compliance.
Thank you. Ms. Sue, your first witness.
Okay, we have here today Mr. Eduardo Esparza, who performed the inspection at the facility. He will testify regarding the facility's need to have a source test performed on facility's boilers. Mr. Esparza, could you please state and spell your name for the record?
Eduardo, E-D-U-A-R-D-O, Esparza, E-S-P-A-R-Z-A.
And did you take the oath this morning?
Yes.
And did you perform an inspection at Sherman Oaks Hospital?
Yes.
What was your title at the district at the time of the inspection?
The Air Quality Inspector 3.
Could you please briefly describe your responsibilities at that time?
My responsibilities included performing inspections at various facilities in order to determine compliance with AQMD rules and regulations as well as permit conditions.
And did you inspect the hospital between December 2017 and February 2018?
Yes,
And on what dates did you inspect the facility?
December 12th and 13, 2017, as well as February 20, 2018.
And did you observe boilers at the facility?
Yes,
How many?
5.
And was each of those boilers operating?
Yes,
And what type of fuel did each use?
natural gas.
And what was the make and model of each boiler?
They're well McLean.
Okay, and what was the rating of each boilers in BTU per hour?
There were 3 were rated 1.9 million and 2 were rated 1.7 million.
Great. And are you familiar with Rule 1146.2?
Yes,
And what is the purpose of that rule?
to control NOx emissions from boilers and water heaters.
And what is the emissions limits for boilers manufactured before 1992?
30 parts per million for NOx,
And what is the parts per million for carbon monoxide?
400 parts per million for CO.
And does that limit apply to the facilities boilers?
Yes,
And how do you know when the facilities boilers were manufactured?
it was based on the boilerplates and the previous inspector's information or report.
And when were the boilers manufactured?
1990.
And referring you to Rule 1146.2E, how can a unit meet the requirements of Rule 1146C1 through C5?
They could either be replaced with certified low NOx units, retrofitted with the certified low NOx kits, or they could perform a source test indicating compliance with the emission limits.
And has any of the 5 boilers been certified?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay, and has a certified retrofit kit been installed on any of the 5 boilers?
Not to my knowledge, no.
And has the district received a source test report showing that that shows compliance with the emissions limits for any of the 5 boilers?
District has not received a source test.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Thank you, Ms. Sue. Mr. LaFawn, do you have any questions for this witness?
I believe there was just 3 boilers in question, were there not?
There is a total of 5 that would need to comply with the 1146.2.
Yeah, because I believe in here it says 3.
Have you had an opportunity, Mr. LaFond, and others to review the stipulated order, the proposed findings and decision?
Yes, well, we did, I talked to Ms. Sue on the phone, and she told us we were out of compliance. I did tell her that we've hired somebody to fix them, which is the gentleman to the left here.
I think it would be wise at this juncture, if you have not thoroughly reviewed the proposed order, to do so. We can go off the record,
Okay.
and that way you can be 100% familiar, because it does mention all 5 boilers in that document. So would 5 minutes be enough? Would you like 10 minutes?
That'd be great.
Okay, 5 minutes would be fine? Okay, then we're going to go off the record for 5 minutes, and we'll, Senator.
While they're off the record, you should discuss with your consultant,
Right.
who may have a better understanding
Yes.
what the stipulated order is all about, and we can cut through the chase, all right?
Very good. That's exactly what we're
Good
doing.
suggestion. So let's give that 10 minutes then, or a little bit less, and we'll reconvene at 9:20.
Okay. great.
Okay?
Thank
So we're off the record. We're back on the record. Mr. LaFond, we left off if you had questions for the witness. Do you have any?
Could we,
Oh,
before we
yes.
begin, we have a couple of changes to the proposed stipulated order. Can we put those on the record?
Yes, please. This would be a good time.
So on page 4, line 16, strike out July 31st and put in August 30th. And on line 21 of that same page, strike out and 1415 have and insert the word has. And those are the changes we are proposing. Can we get on the record that the hospital stipulates to these changes as well?
Mr. LaFond, can you just state whether you stipulate to those changes?
Yes, we do.
Thank you. And perhaps we should, at some point, once we have the evidence of it, I know you mentioned it in your opening, Ms. Sue, but it still mentions the air conditioning, even though we just struck out 1415, there's still several paragraphs about it. So either we could decide by the end to remove those paragraphs altogether or add a paragraph to match evidence that they are actually in compliance.
On page 3, the first paragraph, that's paragraph 5 on page 3, it does say that after the filing the petition, respondent
right.
demonstrated has caused an audit to be performed and so forth.
But it does say, the audit showed that the system did have refrigerant leaks.
Oh,
Okay.
it should have said did not.
Okay.
That's a
Okay.
typo.
Okay, that's a big difference.
Yes.
Okay.
Apologies.
Okay, so we're looking for all board members and for the record, on page 3 at the very top, paragraph numbered 5, line 3, the word not should be inserted between did and have, so that it reads that the audit showed that the system did not have refrigerant leaks. Okay, thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay. Now with that, Mr. LaFond, do you have any questions for Mr. Esparza?
No, I do not. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. Camarena has questions.
Thank you. Mr. Esparza, I didn't get the dates of your inspections. Could you repeat them, please?
December 12th, 2017, December 13th, 2017, and February 20, 2018.
Thank you. And prior to those dates, had you previously inspected that facility?
Not personally, no.
Prior to December 12th, 2017, when was the previous inspection made? Do you know?
Approximately October 26, 2012.
How long has the respondent been in violation of 1146.2?
I believe as of January 1st, 2015, when the Rule 1146.2 applied to boilers over 15 years old.
The date again, January what?
January 1st, 2015.
Yeah. And let's see, Rule 1415, they're now in compliance.
Correct.
And how long were they in violation of that rule?
I believe their previous submittal was around 2001, and they're required to submit every 2 years, so it'd be approximately 2003.
Thank you.
Mr. Esparza, do you know what the boilers are rated in terms of emissions profile that are at the facility?
No.
Do you have any opinion as to whether or not it's possible for these boilers to meet what is it, 30 ppm NOx and 400 ppm CO standards or limits just simply through a source test?
I would have to defer that to an engineer in terms of emissions of boilers.
Do you know if it's usual, if boilers of this age would be able to meet it simply with a source test?
Generally, older boilers would not be able to meet the NOx limits. Generally, a lot of boilers would have to be retrofitted.
And to your knowledge, have these boilers been retrofitted?
To my knowledge, no.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions, board members? No other questions of Mr. Esparza? Okay, thank you. Oh, Mr. Camarena.
Apparently, on 1415, they're in compliance, but they were in violation as of 2003?
I believe so, yes.
Okay, and then came into compliance when?
When they submitted their 1415 registration plan.
Which was?
I checked with permit services and we received it on June 12th, 2018.
Do you know if there's a district policy on following up on violation notices?
I believe there is.
Do you know what that is?
I believe policy is to follow up within 10 days.
Is that written?
I'm not sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Dr. Lerner?
First, let me say for the record that I once interviewed with the CEO of your hospital for a job, but I had at that time, I was not a member of the board, just for the record. The second question is,
Oh, but before, let me just ask you, do you feel that you are no longer objective in sitting today?
I'm sorry?
Are you objective today in sitting and hearing this matter?
Oh, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
Okay, no bias.
Disqualify yourself.
No. No. Mr. Esparza, could you please repeat your comment about when the registration was sent in or issued? Your last comment to Mr. Camarena.
Sure. I checked with permit services and we received the 1415 registration on June 12th, 2018.
2018?
June 12th, 2018.
Thank you very much.
Other questions? Thank you very much. Ms. Sue, no other witnesses? Oh, sorry.
Somebody said something about, plan was submitted 2012. Did you say something about the plans being submitted 2012 and therefore they were in compliance?
I don't believe I said
You don't say 2012.
He said 2012 with regard to the last inspection, was that?
Correct. The last inspection was in 2012.
So 2018. All right.
Mr. LaFont, would you like witnesses? Would you do your own testimony, and then we'll ask questions? Would you like to proceed?
Yes. Like my point at the beginning, since we notified this year that would make her to get into compliance, and we are working with the boiler engineer to get this resolved. by.
Okay. I know I'll have questions for your engineer, your boiler engineer, questions they may have, but perhaps we can start if you can just introduce your boiler engineer.
On the left is my lead engineer. His name is Cesar Navarro. And this is Dinesh. This is the gentleman, our contractor we hired to bring the boilers in compliance.
Okay. Perhaps have them, if each of you gentlemen in turn can just state your name, spell it for the record, tell us your title, and indicate for the record that you took the oath, and then we'll take it from there.
Dinesh Sabharwal, I have taken the oath. Name spells as D as in David, I-N-E-S-H. Last name is Subharwal, S-U-B-H-E-R-W-A-L. We are the contractors who is working on the boilers. Contractor. Our company name is RKDM Enviro Energy Services. I would like to make a very short statement. The boilers has been retrofitted with low NOx burner some time back, which I do not have a record, when and how. They already have the low NOx burners. We have been working on the boilers which were functional at the time when we started. Out of 5 boilers, 3 of them we were able to bring into the compliance. We have some other issues, that's why we need a little more time to run it continuously for the required time. We are working on that one. The boilers were retrofitted low NOx burner. We have not modified, we just have to adjust them. It does not need to be retrofitted or replaced at this time.
Okay, do you have any other, anything else to add? Or Mr. LaFawn, did you have any questions for Mr. Sabharwal? And if not, then we'll have Ms. Sue ask questions.
No, I do not.
Okay. Ms. Sue, would you like to ask questions of this witness?
Has each of the 5 boilers at issue in this matter, have they each of them been retrofitted with low NOx burners?
Yes, all 5 boilers are retrofitted.
Okay. And you mentioned that 3 boilers have already been brought into compliance. Could you tell me what is the evidence for that? Did you already?
We use testo analyzer, which is used for monitoring as well, which is calibrated routinely. And then we go there and tune up the boilers with that one. And I think we submitted a letter to Mr. Raymond that these are the numbers at this time.
Okay.
So.
And what are the numbers at this time for those 3 boilers?
2 boilers were at close to 28 ppm, and the third one was close to 25 ppm on NOx. 1.7 million BTU was at close to 25 ppm.
And what were the numbers for carbon monoxide?
It was below 400.
Do you have the exact numbers?
No, I don't.
Thank you. No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Board members, questions? What are the other 2? Have you also taken readings on the other 2 boilers?
Those 2 boilers were non-functional when we moved in. One of them was leaking. Other one was taken apart. So we have to bring in parts for that one to put them together before we could do anything. So we are in a process to bring them into functionality. After that, they will be worked on, and we will take it from there.
I noticed that when the parties came back, you changed the date in condition number 2 on page 4 from July 31st to August 30th. Will you be ready by August 31st to submit source test reports for the 3 boilers?
We shall be able to submit test report for all 5 boilers.
No, my question is by the original July 31st date.
If it is only 3, then we have to focus only on those 3 boilers. Then I will need more time for the, for those on the back burner, and we'll need extra time for those.
Okay, so my question is, would you be willing to stagger it so that condition 2 would read that by July 31st, source test report would be submitted for the 3 that you think are in compliance, and then by August 30th, submit the source test results for the other 2?
We can do that.
Okay, and I should make sure
Yes, it can.
that everyone agrees.
No problem.
And are you able to speak then for the respondent? Or should I have Mr. LaFond? Mr. LaFond, if you could.
Yes.
Yes, okay. Yes, we
Okay.
can do that.
And then you say all 5 are retrofitted. That means with the low NOx burners or anything else?
Low NOx burner.
Okay. And do you know what these boilers were originally rated at in terms of their emission limits?
From his conversation, what I come to know is that they were built in 1990. Obviously, in between, there were rule changes where there were requirement to meet 30 ppm NOx. At that time, in early mid-90s, sometime around that time, it's happened, if I remember. And then people did retrofit their boilers. And I'm pretty much sure that these boilers were also retrofitted around that time, because these are not original burners. They are low NOx burners with FGR in place.
So, but you do not know when they were retrofit, and no one at the facility knows?
I'm not aware of it. I cannot speak on behalf of the facility.
Okay. I see Mr. LaFont had, I'm going to be unconventional and just ask Mr. LaFont, since you might have an answer.
I asked that question myself when I got there. I've only been there 2.5 years, and my lead engineer's only been there about a year. So we asked the people that have been working there a while, they weren't sure when they had been retrofitted at all.
Okay. Those are my questions. Anyone else have questions? Mr. Camarena?
Yes, this question is for Mr. LaFond. Apparently, somebody didn't keep track of things.
Correct.
Going forward, how will you make sure that you stay on top of things, make sure that you're in compliance with district rules?
Well, I also have an assistant there as well, who's been there 20 years. That's why I was kind of surprised that she did not know that these were out of compliance. But nobody could really remember when the last time AQMD had come in to inspect the boilers until this year. Going forward, actually, we'll make sure that we take care of the boilers as well as everything else. We'll stay on top of it.
District rules change from time to time.
Exactly. We got to, exactly.
So you
Yes.
got to get in on the mailing list or something.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Mr. Camarena?
No, thank you.
Anyone else have questions? Go ahead, Senator.
Excuse me. These 5 boilers were not in compliance and therefore required the kit to retrofit. We can stipulate to that, correct? Yes? Yes. Okay, fine.
Let's, just for the record, let's stick with Mr. Subberwall unless you have questions. And so that way, Mr. Subberwall, if you could answer the questions
Oh,
into
yeah,
the
just
for the
directed to
record.
him.
Okay, but I'm just, for clarity of the record, Mr.
Okay,
Subberwall,
thank
if you can respond to that question, I think the answer was yes, but please answer, and all the other questions will be directed to you.
Now, the next question is that were they all retrofitted at the same time or approximately at the same time?
It seems like.
Seemed like, were they registered, with the time lapse then, from one to the other?
One thing is that I cannot read any dates on that one written. But one thing from my own experience I can speak, that being a contractor, when we walk into a facility and we have to retrofit, if either one boiler or there are 10 boilers, we get purchase order to do all of them. They may not be done in one day, can be spread in a few months, but it is not beyond that.
Did you retrofit these boilers?
No, we did not.
Do you know who did?
No.
Do you know when you think it was done?
From my own experience, I do know that in mid-90s, early 90s or mid-90s, when 1146 did come into, and then it was requirement of 30 ppm. That's the time majority of the work was done. Who did, when did they do it? I would not be able to answer that question.
When you became a consultant, were they, those 3 boilers, were they in compliance at that time, or did you
No, sir.
tinker with it?
No, sir.
You made some adjustments to bring it in compliance.
Now we have done some adjustments, not at that time.
Did you at any time make an adjustment to bring the 3 boilers in compliance?
Only when they called us in at this time.
Did you make any adjustments to the boiler to bring it in compliance? When they called you in, did you do that?
We have done adjustments, yes.
So you brought in, during your tenure, the boilers, when you did some adjustments, they came in compliance, those 3, yes or no?
Yes.
Okay, fine. Then, what was the time amount allotted to those 3, generally speaking, to bring those 3 in compliance? Was it a lot of effort, or you were able to do it?
It does take a little time when they go out of compliance. Approximately a couple of days were spent on each boiler because two reasons for that. One, boilers do not stay on because of summertime. They come on and off, on and off. So you don't get a continuous run a long time where you can make adjustments and see what it is. So you have to sit and wait for its next cycle. So that's the only reason it took longer. If it was a winter time, this should have been done within a day for each boiler. So being summertime, it took a couple of days to bring into compliance, if that answers your question.
When were they brought into compliance? The wintertime, the summertime, or when?
It is in summertime.
Last summer?
This summer.
This summer, all
Yes.
right. Now, what about the other 2 that are not in compliance?
Those boilers were not functional. One of them was taken apart. These are sectional boilers. They are built of different sections. And the second boiler was leaking, was not working at that time. It was offline. So first of all, we had to repair those boilers, make them functional, then we can work on them to bring into compliance.
Okay, in your opinion, professional opinion, are these boilers salvageable?
These boilers are in good condition, yes, sir.
They're what?
They are in a very good condition.
Oh, very good condition. So are they salvageable where they can eventually function
Yes, sir.
with the retrofit
Yes, sir.
and brought into compliance, is your opinion?
They will function for extended period of time with compliance, yes.
And to your knowledge, if you know, were all these boilers put online about the same time, or some came before others?
As I stated at this time, each boiler runs for a minute or 2, then it shuts off because demand is not there. But they can work all at the same time, yes.
Well, they have a serial number. So my question is, in your professional opinion, you've seen the serial number. When you think these boilers were acquired in the first place?
Being
20 years, 50 years?
you cannot read serial numbers on the boilers. They are built in 90s. That will be close to about 28 years. So things, they take repair work, this and that. Different contractor walks in, put hands on it, and somebody put things away or put something against the number plate, it goes away, which is a normal thing on older boilers.
No question.
Couple questions. What did you actually do for the 3 boilers? Did you just sort of tweak them? What did you do to get them in compliance, aside from the low NOx burners?
It is tweaking, making appropriate air and gas adjustment so that when it is running, it is always in compliance.
Okay, and so whatever adjustments you've made, those are long-term adjustments. They don't just get made right before testing.
They are long-term adjustments, yes.
Okay. What is there, and I don't know if you're the witness to ask, and if you're not, that's fine, and I'll go back to Mr. LaFawn when appropriate, but if the 2 additional other boilers, if you can't get them in compliance, what is the plan? Is there a plan in place if they fail? do you know of? And if you don't, I'll ask
Boilers
Mr.
will
LaFont.
they will be in compliant, because I have experience with these kind of burners. We should not have taken responsibility or given any assurance that it will become compliant before taking the job. And as I am speaking here, we have already worked successfully, and we know that we can bring it into compliance.
And is
All
that
the
be-
boiler will be in compliance.
And is that because they're all around the same age?
The burners are low NOx burners. Different contractors know how to work on them. Not everybody does, depending who is working on them, and they ignore certain things. Other people who know how to work on them, they keep in compliant. As long as we are servicing them, we will make sure it is always in compliance, and it is a long-term compliant. Once we mark it where it is, and nobody has to disturb that thing.
But the question is, why do you have so much, why do you have so much faith that you can fix or bring into compliance the other two? Is it because they are the same age, same make as the other three that are currently?
That is correct.
Okay. Ms. Burt?
Is the timing on the bringing the last two into compliance because you have parts that have to be ordered, or?
Yes,
Okay, so you're expecting to receive those. Have the parts already been ordered?
they has been ordered.
Okay.
Yes.
And when do you expect that they would be received?
That is why parts are on the way, and when they come in, we will put it together and, pardon me. These dates we based on what we have at this time logistics on that one. That's why we asked for another 30 days for other two.
Okay, and I guess what I'm trying to confirm is that that 30 days is all that you need, because you know that the parts will be there and you know that you'll have the days.
Yes.
Okay, and the parts will then be coming soon. You said you needed like a couple days per boiler for adjustments on the 3, so is that the same for the 2?
Just for a little explanation, these are called sectional boilers. They are built of cast iron.
Okay.
They are very heavy sections.
Okay.
It's not something which you pick up a piece and put it there. They are secured in different manner, and then you bring in piece by piece in place. They are about 400 or 500 pound each. So bring them in. It is very delicate work. That's why it is time consuming. So the material comes in, then we have to take it to the location where the boiler is. Then we have to assemble them. It's a process. That's why it's a little time consuming. So boilers are on the order, parts are on order, and they will be in place, and we shall be able to provide that, yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Question?
Yeah.
Dr. Lerner?
I don't know anything about boilers except the ones I replace in my cellar every 5 to 10 years. Just to put not much of a fine point, but just for my information, there are two components to a boiler in my simple way of thinking about it. One is the reservoir that holds the water, and the water goes in and it gets heated and goes out. And then there is the heaters. Is that correct?
Burner.
What is the life expectancy of the tanks that hold that hold the water?
These are sectional boilers. Let me stay on these boilers rather than going in a broad spectrum. These are sectional boilers. These sections can be replaced. The water holds in the section itself. The way they are built is, if this is a section, you have water in the bottom part of it, and burner is on one side. As it heats up, it creates steam. These are steam boilers, not water heaters. So steam is on the top of it, and then steam is supplied to wherever it has to go.
Okay. What is the life expectancy of that device? I mean, where the steam is formed?
Literally, you can replace those parts. They have certain parts sometimes leak because they're made of cast iron. With aging, on one of the sections we have to replace, out of 6 sections, we have to replace 5 of them. So, but when you put 5 new in there, it's again brand new boiler basically. So it can last for again 10, 15 years.
Okay, thank you.
Senator has questions.
you explain in response to some of the questions when you think or how these boilers are going to be retrofitted, how they're going to be adjusted and become operational within the requirements of the room. You also stated that by July 31st, the original date, 2018, 3 will be in compliance, as they are now, you say. Then you went on to say that by August 30th, the other 2 will be in compliance. Now, what you've done, you put a limit on it. All this work you have to do, all the new parts, retrofit, et cetera, can it all be done by August 30th?
Yes, sir.
You stick to that date?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Anyone have any additional questions for Mr. Seberwal? I have some for, just 2 for Mr. LaFond, so I'll wait to switch. Okay, seeing none. Mr. LaFond, one general question I have. This is a hospital.
It is.
Were we to simply say, you know, you're in violation, you just can't operate the boilers, can you please tell us what these boilers are used for and what would be the impact to the hospital?
Well, of course, you know, it's our heating. So being in San Fernando Valley, it's fairly warm there, so the boilers don't have to run all the time. And very seldom do they actually run until winter comes. So, but it would be, you know, during the winter, of course, that'd be.
So they are not used for any other medical uses. And so with that said, during the summer, is it that they are generally run only for the testing and maintenance purposes that you are undertaking currently?
Correct.
Okay. It's helpful to know too. And then I had one other question. I think that's just been answered. Anyone else have any questions for Mr. LaFond? Seeing none. Mr. LaFond, I know you have another gentleman with you. Do you feel you need to put him on for any additional information, or do you feel you've covered everything you need in terms of evidence?
Okay. No, I think he's the boiler engineer at the hospital. That's why, you know, he'd speak better regarding the boilers than I will, but okay, no. If no one has any other
Anyone have
questions.
any questions? Ms. Sue, anyone would have a question for? Okay.
Well, I do have one more thing to say.
Yes.
The repair of these boilers are our short-term plan to get into compliance. Our long-term plan is to eventually replace these boilers with new, updated boilers, of course. So,
And what is the time frame on that longer-term plan? Do you actually have any type of plan in place where you know when you plan to incur the funding, look for the boilers that meet your needs, et cetera, or is it just, we want to do it?
no, the corporation I work for, Prime Healthcare, they're actually very good at, when you need, if there's a need, they fill it. We did tell them regarding the boilers, they said, what do you want to do? I said, well, we got to get in compliance first, which is the fix. And then we want to look at, of course, replacing the boilers. It would take a few years to do that.
Few years?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
Anyone have any questions on that? Was there anything else that you wanted to add? That's very helpful.
Okay.
Thank you.
Good. Thank you so much.
I had just a quick question. If you don't mind, I would like to just ask Mr. Esparza, if you don't mind, one question. So you've heard the testimony, Mr. Esparza, correct? You've been here.
Yes.
Okay. The low NOx burners, was that something that you would have seen on your inspection, that you did see, or is it something that would not be noticeable upon inspection?
The rule requires if the boilers were retrofitted with low NOx burners that a new rating plate or boiler plate be installed, and I did not see a new boiler plate at the time of my inspection.
Does that give you pause, or do you feel perhaps that they just did not install the boilerplate?
I would not be able to answer that.
And I will, sorry, this is most unorthodox, I understand, but Mr. Seberwal, do you have any idea why there is not that new rating or boilerplate upon the boiler with these low NOx burners?
A rating plate is there on the burner itself is there, but there is not, on the boilers, they are normally being sectionals. They simply put how many sections are on the boiler. And if we can provide you the date when they were built, if we go back to Weil McLean, maybe they may have that record. They can provide, if that is essential, we can ask them. Then when were they sold and when were they installed?
I'm thinking that it might be wise, if the parties are amenable, to add a possible return to the board after the date of August 30th, but before our year jurisdiction is up, in the event that the source tests are failed. And let me first ask Mr. Esparza, if you receive sourced, or if the district, I don't know if you know this, because you're an inspector, and I don't know if you'd be looking at the source test results, I assume not. But do you have any idea if source tests are received by August 30th, when the district is there then a review of those source tests, or would it be obvious right upon immediate receipt of whether there's a pass or a fail?
I believe source tests are reviewed by our source testing department.
And would you have any idea of the time frame in which they are reviewed?
I would not be able to speak to that.
Well, let me ask, and then during deliberation, perhaps we'll consider a time frame. But let me start with Ms. Sue. Would you be amenable to a added condition that would be conditional if any of the 5 source tests shows a failure of any boiler, to return to the hearing board for a hearing?
Yes, the district would be amenable to that. And I also want to suggest another change on paragraph 1. It mentioned by July 17, 2018, that a source test shall be performed on all 5 boilers. Given the testimony, perhaps for the other remaining 2 boilers, that date should be lengthened to a later point in time.
That's an excellent point. Mr. LaFawn, let me ask you if the Sherman Oaks Hospital would be amenable to that return we would craft it so that it would only be if there's a failed source test.
That would be fine.
And then I'll ask one of you if you could tell us, based on Ms. Sue's comment with regard to the July 17th for the source test, what would be, I assume that would be for the first 3?
Yes.
What would be, let's see, maybe we can start by asking Mr. Subberwall, what would be a date for the additional 2 for those source tests?
That will be by August 15th.
Mr. LaFawn, is Sherman Oaks Hospital agreeable to that date then?
Yes, we are.
Thank you. Ms. Sue?
Yes, we are.
Okay. All right, before we close out evidence, yes, it would be August 15th. So we would still keep the July 17th date for the first 3 source tests on the boilers. I assume, let's be clear, those are the boilers rated 1,900,000 BTU.
That is right.
Okay, and so then it's the 1.7 million BTU boilers that are August 15th.
Yes.
Okay. Any other questions before we close out evidence? Okay. I'm going to ask if any member of the public, I see that there are empty seats, so I'm going to, for the record, state that there's no member of the public present who wishes to be heard on this. Ms. Sue, you're closing, and then we'll take a few minutes just to recraft those conditions and then deliberate.
We asked the hearing board to enter the stipulated proposed order. Based on the testimony, the facility is confident that it will be able to meet the timelines and do source test reports and also submit those reports in a timely manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Mr. LaFawn, do you have any closing statement you wish to make?
No, thanks for your time. We're sure we're going to be in compliance.
Thank you. I think what we'll do is we'll go off the record for a few minutes, and that way we can, before we deliberate, we can try to craft some conditions to match what was agreed upon, and then we can deliberate based on that. So we'll go off the record. Let's just make it an even 10 minutes. We'll be back on the record at 10:10. We are back on the record. I'm going to read the suggestions that I have and then ask each party whether they agree, and then we can deliberate. The board will deliberate. Thank you, Mr. Esparza. Oh, he took I wanted to thank him because, anyway, he was very prepared. Okay, so in condition number 1 on page 4, I would suggest that we leave the sentence as it reads up until the word "and" on line 14, so that it would be by July 17th, respondent shall have a source test performed on each of its 3 natural gas-fired Weil-McLean boilers rated at 1.9 million BTUs per hour, and we would just insert, by August 15th, 2018, respondent shall have a source test performed on each of its, and then it will continue, 2 natural gas-fired Weil-McLean boilers. So it's just repeating that first sentence, but with the date of August 15th. Is that, Ms. Sue, is that okay?
Yes, we agree with that change.
And Mr. Lafon?
Yes, it is.
Okay, thank you. And then on condition number 2, we would leave the July 31st date. So we had originally changed that date to August 30th. That would change back to July 31st. And then on line 17, where it says emissions limits for each of its, instead of 5 boilers, we would say 3 boilers rated at 1.9 or 1,900,000 BTU per hour, and by August 30th, 2018, for each of its 2 boilers rated at 1,700,000 BTU per hour. So again, just taking the same language, but just breaking it up in that manner with the 2 different dates. Ms. Sue, does that, sorry, you're still writing.
We are okay with that, but I just wanted to mention that the way the sentence is structured, the source test is supposed to demonstrate compliance with those limits, so it doesn't leave the room that the board was suggesting regarding coming back if a source test was failed, unless in the second sentence you make that clear.
I'm gonna add a provision with regard to that.
Okay.
Okay, so does that change is that acceptable?
Yes, I just want to make sure that the room that the board has suggested is present in the stipulated proposed order. So if a following sentence takes care of that, that is fine with me.
I was going to add a condition after that, just with the return. Just ministers demonstrating compliance. I am assuming it's not my desire to change what the parties have already agreed to. So I don't believe I would want to change, and we have not deliberated, but that the test report should demonstrate compliance. It's just, what if it doesn't?
Okay, I am fine with the proposed changes. Thank
Okay.
you.
Thank you. Mr. Lafond?
We are.
Okay. And then I would suggest adding a condition number 3, which would read, I'm going to read it a little bit quicker and then I'll read it more slowly. If any of the 5 boilers fails to pass its source test, the parties shall return to the hearing board for a status and modification hearing on, and then we would pick a date. Through deliberation, we could maybe pick a date, but I was thinking give it a month, September 30th, but again, we don't have any evidence to go on or how long it will take the district to review it, and I want to make sure that if the district determines later that it did not pass, that it would be encompassed in this. So let me read it a little slower and then we'll talk about the date. That makes sense. If any of the 5 boilers fails to pass its source test, comma. The parties shall return to the hearing board for a status and modification hearing on, and we insert date here. And the date I would suggest is September 30th. And we'll deliberate further on that, but let me ask, unless Senator, you had something you wanted to say on that.
Status, yes. Once you have a status hearing, do you have to say in advance for modification?
We do for noticing purposes. So this way, if during the status, we don't have to modify based on this, but this way, the hearing is noticed as a modification. So if we determine as a hearing board that a modification is necessary, we can do that.
Isn't modification already included in the stipulation at some point?
It would we would have to have this particular hearing. Oh, I said September 30th, and I didn't even check what date it was. Thank you so much for that. It's for notice purposes. It is not assumed. If we set a future hearing date in here, we'd have to note that it would be for status and modification, just in case.
Thank you.
And thank you, Madam Clerk, for catching that I didn't even consider what dates we are actually in session. Not Sunday. We'll do it Saturday or Monday. So I suppose, I think it's safe to say October 2nd, which is a Tuesday, if that's an agreeable date. But again, we'll deliberate further on that, and I'd like to hear from Ms. Sue, if you have any opinion on that.
Not a Tuesday, we should avoid that.
Okay.
Keep it open.
Okay, I'm gonna suggest October 3rd, since it's so far in advance, which is a Wednesday. It is in accordance with our policy of how we fill our calendar. And I would suggest that because, as the evidence showed, it's still warm in September, so it's unlikely the boilers will be operating. Ms. Sue, do you have any opinion on that date, and do you generally approve of that condition?
We have reached out to the source test group and are waiting to hear back how long they think they will need to review the report, but we don't have that information yet. I'm generally agreeable to the idea of coming back if there's a failed source test report.
So do you suggest that instead of a date, we need some kind of cutoff date? All right. So right now we'll put the date aside, but we do have agreement on the return. Okay. Mr. LaFond, do you agree? Can you say that in the record?
Yes, we agree.
Okay. All right. Hearing board members, I would start the deliberation, and then I'd like to hear what others feel, but I do believe that there is good cause to grant this proposed order with the changes. I definitely have some concerns as voiced with regard to the fact that the hospital says that there are the low NOx burners. Inspector, Mr. Esparza, says he did not see the appropriate plate on the boiler. We don't know whether they will pass, but the hospital seems to feel pretty confident that 3 are already within the range and that they will pass. And with the return and the fact that these boilers are not operating other than for testing and maintenance through the summer months, that there's good cause for this without anything further in it. And also weighing that against the fact that once the winter does hit, these boilers are crucial for operation of the hospital. And I'd love to have a date for the return, But I guess we'll talk about that and hope that we'll hear from the district staff. Senator?
You can insert the date, and if it's determined that it should slip, it'll slip, you'll be notified. But at least that's your target.
I prefer to have an outside date because if we allow a date that would slip, it could slip for the entire year. I would prefer to have an outside date rather than a,
So you hold the feet to the fire for the district, set the date.
that I think it makes sense. I think a month seems, even without hearing it, but I'd like to hear what others feel. Anyone else have any? Ms. Byrd?
If you could set the date as you're saying, and then maybe have a trigger as to October 3rd or 2 weeks after approval of the district, the source test or something like that, maybe it could give you a little bit more comfort that it's going to happen.
The only thing I worry about, I thought about that, I think it's a good suggestion, but I would like the facility to come. If it fails, I don't want them to wait until the later date. So I prefer to have that date, and if the parties find that there is not, and I would speak directly, I suppose, to Ms. Sue, if the district doesn't have the appropriate review completed, a continuance can always be sought. And the chair would at that time consider whether or not it's appropriate to continue. Actually, that makes sense. Didn't think of that till just a second. Anyone else have any other points on deliberation? Any other discussion? Dr. Lerner?
Yeah, I don't write as fast as you talk. Would you mind repeating the page 4, the second paragraph under boilers number 2?
I will do that. I'm going to make the motion, and so I'll repeat it slowly during the motion making. But generally, it's that the 3 would be due July 31st, and the 2 that are rated 1.7 million BTU, the date of August 30th would apply to those.
Okay, fine.
But I'll repeat it slowly. Ms. Sue?
Thank you for the reminder about seeking continuance, given that we are fine with the October 3rd date.
October 3rd, right. And Mr. LaFond, I'll come back to you since it's changed since I first asked you, but is October 3rd, does that work for the facility as well?
It does.
Okay. Okay, if there is no other, let me just put that in. No other deliberation, I will make a motion in the matter of South Coast Air Quality Management District versus Sherman Oaks Hospital, case number 6108-1. I move that we grant the stipulated proposed order for abatement along with the findings and decision that are proposed with the following changes, based on good cause as discussed during deliberation, deleting the word proposed from the caption and the footer. On page 3, line 3, in paragraph numbered 5, inserting the word not between did and have, so that line reads, the audit showed that the system did not have refrigerant leaks. On page 4, condition 1 will now read, by July 17, 2018, respondent shall have a source test performed on each of its 3 natural gas-fired Weil-McLean boilers rated at 1,900,000 BTU per hour, and by August 15, 2018, respondent shall have a source test performed on each of its, and then it would continue, 2 natural gas-fired Weil-McLean boilers rated at 1,700,000 BTU per hour. Condition number 2 will now read, by July 31st, 2018, Respondent shall submit a source test report demonstrating compliance with Rule 1146.2 emission limits for each of its 3 boilers rated at 1,900,000 BTU per hour, and by August 30th, 2018, for each of its 2 boilers rated at 1,700,000 BTU per hour. And then there will be an additional condition number 3, which will read, if any of the 5 boilers fails to pass its source test, comma, the parties shall return to the hearing board for a status and modification hearing on October 3rd, 2018. And then we would renumber paragraphs 3 through 5 appropriately. And I believe that completes my motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Dr. Lerner has seconded the motion. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, seeing none. I see the well, not the attorneys, but the parties are speaking. Is there anything else we should add before we vote?
Could we take a 5-minute break?
Okay.
Sorry.
Okay. We're going to take a 5-minute break, and we are off the record. We are back on the record. We were about to vote. Is there something that we need to hear from the parties?
Yes, sorry for the delay. What we request of the board that you allow us to have all 5 boilers done by August, what was the date, 30th? Instead of, the July date and then due to the fact that there's a protocol that has to be approved by AQMD for us to source test the boilers. These boilers only run 7-8 minutes tops. And what normally source testing is done for 15 minutes. So they have to give us a exception to the protocol, a new protocol to do that. And sometimes that takes 1 or 2 months. Yeah, but you were going to have it expedited.
We did not, I assume we can get 3 votes. Yes, we have 3 votes to reopen the hearing, because we're going to need to. Okay. Is that the reason why originally, when you went out and came back, you proposed August 30th as the date for the 5 boilers?
Yes.
Okay. Would you be willing to include a condition that would require what you just said you are willing to do, which is to request and pay for expedited processing for the protocol?
Yes.
Okay. How would you phrase that? Respondent shall request and pay for expedited processing of its source test protocol
That sounds right.
for the 5 boilers, for its 5 boilers?
Correct.
Okay. Okay, and before we close back out, does anyone have any questions for Mr. LaFond or anyone with regard to this new information? Okay, seeing none. Ms. Sue, is that acceptable?
Yes, that addition is acceptable.
Okay, then we will further deliberate and we will determine whether to amend that motion. Thank you very much.
And, sorry,
Oh,
may I
Ms.
also,
Sue.
I wanted to remind the board, I initially had one more change to the stipulated proposed order that the hospital has already stipulated to page 4 to strike out and 1415 have. That's on line 21.
I had it highlighted and I totally forgot.
And
Thank
insert
you.
the word has there.
Okay, I will try to remember to reread it, and if I forget during the new motion, please remind me. Okay, thank you. With that, the hearing is closed. And board members, I believe that makes sense, that it's quite possible that by July 31st, this source test protocol would not be ready and the source test done. And so long as the expedited processing for the source test protocol is requested and paid for, I would be willing to amend my motion. First, I'll start with Dr. Lerner. Would you be willing to accept that as a second?
Yes.
Okay. Anyone else have any discussion on that change? Okay. Then I'm just going to repeat the motion. Madam Clerk, I heard you typing. Would it be sufficient for me just to read the new in and okay, and refer to the others? Okay. So let me start this again. No, I'm just going to amend the motion. I've made the motion. The motion's been seconded. I'm going to amend as follows. I am going to insert after the changed and amended condition number 1, a condition number 2, which will state, respondent shall request and pay for expedited processing of its source test protocol for its 5 boilers. Period. And then what was condition number 2 will now be renumbered to condition number 3, and we will change it back to now read by August 30th, 2018. So instead of what is written on the original proposal, changing July 31st to August 30th. And then we will leave the rest of condition 2, now condition 3, as it was stated in the original proposed order for abatement, not as it was changed orally during the motion. Okay, and now what was the new condition 3 will become condition 4, but will stay as was proposed. And then the original condition number 3 with regard to retention of jurisdiction will now be condition 5, and the remaining will be 6 and 7. And finally, the change that I did not incorporate in my motion originally, on line 21 of page 4, the phrase, and 14, I can't even read through, I just scribbled, thank you. And 14, 15 have will be changed to has. So we'll now read compliance with rules 11, and we will take out the S in rules. So compliance with rule, singular, 1146.2 has not yet been achieved. That completes my motion. And Dr. Lerner, do you accept all of those changes?
Yes.
Okay. Any discussion on that amended motion? Seeing none, Mr. Camarena, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Byrd, how do you vote?
Yes.
Senator, how do you vote?
Aye.
Dr. Lerner, you vote?
Yes.
I vote yes. The motion passes 5-0. Ms. Sue is looking at me with deep regret in her
I
eyes.
just wanted to, get clarification 1, and then 2, see if respondent may need a change. For paragraph 1, when are the due dates for the source test to be performed? On page 4.
Line 13?
Yes.
Yes, it is July 17th and August 15th. So that will have to be changed.
It sounds as though respondent would like that to be August 15th for all 5 boilers.
Good, August 15th. I think you said August 15th.
Okay. I'm going to suggest, even though we've already voted on this. I think the best way to do this is officially, if you could just ask, you can make an oral motion. If you can make an oral motion for reconsideration of the board based on the request to amend the hearing, to amend the order for abatement and the findings and decision to reflect a new date for condition number 1.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
a member of the prevailing side, which is us, have to make the motion for reconsideration.
We are neither side. We are not
I mean,
prevailing.
we're
We are the actual.
We can make a motion for reconsideration, then with reconsideration for that purpose, then he makes a statement, then he opens up again, he makes a statement to change it that he wants.
I'm sorry, You're asking for the prevailing side to make a
Well,
motion?
anyway, either one of us can make a motion.
We cannot make a motion. I'm asking one of the parties if they would like to make a motion for reconsideration,
Is that
in which
appropriate?
case we can rule upon it, and as long as we have 3 votes for reconsideration, then we can reopen.
They make the motion?
Yes.
Or we can, the other way, we can
We've made a
consider.
decision. The decision is final upon the vote of 3 or more members of this
So we can,
board.
3 of us can say, reconsider this.
I'm just going to ask one of the parties if they wish to have it reconsidered.
We do.
Okay, so is that an official motion for reconsideration?
Yes, we'd like you to consider that.
And Ms. Sue, I assume your position is that you are in favor of the reconsideration?
Yes, we have no objection to the reconsideration.
Okay, board members, let's just discuss whether or not we are willing to reopen and reconsider our decision. I believe we are, for the same reason. We do not have to reopen the hearing. It merely is a matter of reflecting appropriately the fact that the source test protocol may not be approved in time. So I have a suggestion for how to, but first I want to have a vote on reconsideration. Anyone wish to discuss it before I open up for a vote on reconsideration?
Reconsideration.
On reconsideration, just on reconsidering, whether we wish to reconsider. So I move that we, in the matter of South Coast Air Quality Management District versus Sherman Oaks Hospital, case number 6108-1, reopen our decision for reconsideration. Do I have a second?
Second.
Ms. Byrd seconds. Senator, how do you vote?
Objections.
Okay. Dr. Lerner, how do you vote? On reconsideration and opening up? And Mr. Camarena?
Yes.
Okay. So I'm going to assume Ms. Byrd and I both vote yes, so we have 5 votes. We will now open for reconsideration. Okay, with that said, what I'd like to do is simply amend the motion. First of all, I would like to move what was condition number 2 with regard to respondent shall request and pay for expedited processing of its source test protocol for its 5 boilers. That should be now number 1. And then what was number 1 shall be number 2. I would like to say, respondent shall have a source test performed on each of its 3 natural gas-fired Weil-McLean boilers rated at 1.9 million BTU per hour and that whole thing, as soon as possible, but in no event later than August 15, 2018. So all we would do is essentially delete by July 17, 2018 from the beginning, from what was originally condition 1. So we're going to revert back to the original condition number 1, simply deleting the words by July 1st, by July, whatever that date is now that I blacked it out, 17th, my son's birthday, 2018, we're taking that out, and it would just begin, respondent shall have a source test performed. It would read as it originally was proposed, and then at the very end, instead of a period, it would say, as soon as possible, but in no event later than August 15th, 2018. Okay, and I'm going to ask.
Madam Clerk, I don't wish to delay this any further, but I don't believe that we have any testimony on the record to justify the change.
And why is that? We have,
We reopened it,
yes.
and prior to reopening, we heard something, but it was not on the record because we had already voted. And so we opened or reconsidered, but should there not be on the record testimony to justify that change?
It was my belief that we had adequate testimony when we reopened the hearing in the first place for the other change that was made with regard to, not the source test, but yes. submitting the source test as opposed to performing the source test. And the testimony that we received was that it could take a while for the source test protocol to be approved by the district. And that is why we placed in what is now condition number 1 with regard to paying for expedited processing. Do you think we need additional evidence on which to base the change?
I think the July 17th date is tight but doable.
Okay, so would you like to have the record reopened?
Yes.
Okay, I would vote in favor of that. Yes. Yes, okay, and we have at least 3 votes. Okay, we are reopening the record once again for the sole purpose of additional testimony and evidence with regard to the requested reconsideration of the date of July 17th, 2018, changing that to August 15th for all 5 boilers with regard to the source, the performance of a source test. And I think, Mr. LaFond, you can put on any witness you wish, but I would imagine it would probably be Mr. Subberwall or Mr. Camarena. Do you have a preference for who you'd like to question?
Well, I have 2 questions. Number 1 is how long is it going to take for the protocol to be approved? Secondly, if it's going to be, if it can be approved and likely would be approved within 30 days, why could not the source test be scheduled for, say, July 16th? And that could get it done. I recognize that is a very tight schedule, but it's doable if the protocol can be reviewed and approved within 30 days.
I think the first question, perhaps for Mr. Subberwall in all of that is, do you have your source test protocol prepared, and when can you submit it to the AQMD?
It is not prepared. It has to be prepared by the third party, not by our company. Protocol has to be prepared by the source testing company, which is a third party. So I got to get time from them and ask them to expedite as soon as they can. I don't have any control on them.
With that testimony, then the proposed change is acceptable to me.
Okay. Anyone else, though, while we have the record open, wish to ask any additional questions on this? Okay, seeing none. We're going to close the record then. Thank you for that, Mr. Camarena. Better to be thorough. Okay, so I'm going to return to the new motion on reconsideration, which is merely to change that, what is now condition number 2, which was condition number 1, to delete by July 17, 2018, delete that, to have the paragraph read as it is up until the end, which ends in 1,700,000 BTU per hour, and then to add as soon as possible, but in no event later than August 15th, 2018. Okay. And Dr. Lerner, you accept that change
Yes.
to the original motion? Okay, any discussion, any further discussion on that motion? Okay, seeing none, Mr. Camarena, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ms. Byrd, how do you vote?
Yes.
Senator, how do you vote?
Yes.
Okay, Dr. Lerner votes.
Yes.
I vote yes. Motion on reconsideration passes 5-0.
May I make a comment?
Yes.
That's quite a mumbo jumbo where we had Rebecca scratching her head. Well, I can tell you that these clerks, legal clerks that we have, I guess his comment, is the best I've seen. They have to go through moving and moving and moving and moving. But they've done very well. I mean, this is quite something to achieve based on the opening, closing, and still get it right. It's incredible. Nobody ever say anything nice about them, so I thought I better do that now.
Thank you, and we have every confidence, given how good our staff is, that, and the clerks are, that they will reflect this appropriately and quite accurately, so, seconded, thank you.
I agree.
Thank you. Okay, well, thank you. Any other business, board members? Seeing none, we are adjourned. Thank you all.